see what's out there.
Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There Plus, an entertainment video stream currently focused on Star Wars Ahsoka, which is available to watch on Disney Plus. My name's Keith Isles, and as ever for this stream, I am joined by Graham the Grey, and we are both film and television enthusiasts. And in tonight's episode, we are going to have a spoiler-filled conversation about, well, the entire season, really, of Ahsoka, but specifically parts 7, Dreams and Madness, and part 8, the Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. So if it's your first time here, if it's taken you, all these episodes to find us, then welcome. Please do, if you enjoy this and find it in any way entertaining or informative, consider giving the video a like, subscribing to the channel, and if you hit the bell notification, you'll get informed as and when new content drops. Obviously, this is the last episode we've got for Star Wars for the present. But there may well be future stuff. We also cover films and other TV shows as well on this channel, as well as the name of the channel suggests, we look into physical media, so and technologies around home cinema and things of that nature. So if that's your bag, please do check out some of the stuff we've got here, and we'll be happy for any reviews or comments or anything that you'd like to make is welcome. So talking of welcome, how are you, Graham?
I'm very well, thank you.
We've not seen each other until about 1 minute ago. So.
Oh no, it's all well, and thanks for having me back.
That's all right. Well, thanks for having joined me on this entire journey this season. So I do appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I can see you're sporting a Star Wars T-shirt there.
Quite an apt one, don't you think?
They're just not good shots, period, are they?
N-O.
Excellent. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are going to obviously spoil this series. So if you've not watched the Ahsoka series for any reason, I can't imagine you'd be watching this live stream or this video stream if you haven't. But if you haven't checked out the last episode, the season finale, please make sure you go back and do that before watching or listening to any more of this, because we are going to ruin it. So with that said, Graham, for the last time this season, I guess, you may fire when ready.
Part 7, Dreams and Madness. In Star Wars Galaxy, there's an oversight committee chaired by Mon Mothma. Hera stands accused by Senator Cieno and blah, 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 until there's a surprise and welcome cameo from the legendary C-3PO. This time with a message from Senator Organa. Yes, that Senator Organa. Leia's message states that she authorized Hera's trip to Cetos, so all is well. Go stick that in your tribunal pipe and smoke it, Cieno. But before we exit the scene, Mon Mothma is told by Hera that Thrawn really is coming, and to prepare for the worse and hope for the better. In the other galaxy, Purrgils arrive at Peridia only to be mildly inconvenienced slightly by a minefield. They wait long enough before they leap back into hyperspace for Huyang and Ahsoka's ship to exit their space whale's mouth. Huyang and Ahsoka escape to Peridia after a simple running away maneuver from pretty green lasers shot from the ineffectual baddie attack ships. At least Ahsoka gets to use the Force to find Sabine. All this passive non-killing and destruction is all right with Thrawn. He has a bigger strategy to push Ahsoka into the only place she can go. It seems anywhere she won't be in danger, harmed, or have any of her new snazzy off-white wardrobe blemished, if the rest of this episode is anything to go by. On the surface of Peridia, the same casual day trip of Ezra, Sabine, and the cute Star Wars crab people continues until, oh wait, are we actually going to get some peril that our heroes must face bravely and fight for their lives? Well, sort of. It's mostly everyone just running away, not forgetting Hu Yang, who merely flies the Jedi shuttle very fast about the place. And then there's also not using a lightsaber, Ezra, and not using the Force, Sabine, and not shooting straight, badass-looking Japanese Peridian native baddies, and 2 ships worth of badass-looking stormtroopers. Lord Balin and Shin hold back from all this until Shin is given permission by Uncle Balin to get into the fray, and we finally get to see some thrilling action. Then we don't, when she just runs away after not killing anyone. Ahsoka too had simply jumped off a speeding spaceship, still running away from the aforementioned ineffectual baddie attack ships, gotten into a pretty lightsaber fight with Lord Balin for a bit before running away to join Ezra and Sabine. Balin stays behind on the planet in silence after surviving laser blasts from Hu Yang's ship after Ahsoka had run away. All the goodies are finally reunited with mucho calmness from Ezra, and still no explanation or discussion of how Sabine and Ahsoka had got to the planet, nor how they have zero plans to escape and get back to their own Star Wars galaxy. No Thrawn, no anything else massive to the plot that had driven them a few light years from home to find Ezra. Thrawn is still happy. All this, according to him, was just a time-wasting exercise. Tell me about it. All the cargo is now loaded on his Star Destroyer, and it is ready to head back to Star Wars Galaxy. Part 8. The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. The story remains on Peridia. The Night Witches change Morgan Elsbeth into one of them, and with some funky 1980s BBC children's drama special effects, they make her a flaming green sword. Thrawn tells a cautionary tale of not underestimating low numbers of rebels succeeding against the Empire. We travel with a crab caravan across the plains of Peridia. There's jocularity with Hu Yang and Ezra comparing lightsaber sizes, with the ancient but coy about his age Hu Yang winning. He did, after all, teach Ezra's Jedi Master, Kanan Jarrus. Then it's Sabine and Ahsoka having a more mature heart-to-heart, firstly about the Master Padawan dynamic and how Ahsoka will always be there for Sabine, and then Ahsoka telling Sabine to trust in the Force. Oh, and apparently it's not all about wielding a lightsaber. An attack of 2 TIE fighters rudely interrupts all this talking. The TIEs scuff the Jedi's shuttle paintwork before inevitably being destroyed when Hu Yang literally rams into them. Thrawn's not too bothered about this and preps his night troopers for a ground assault, using the Night Witch's dark magic. What we get is the Ahsoka, Ezra, and Sabine attack on the temple on those wolf dog thingies, dodging a pretty heavy bombardment of green lasers from the Star Destroyer, everyone missing its target as if they were regular stormtroopers with regular blasters. Then an easy battle won by the goodies until zombie stormtroopers. That old black magic works its tricks. There's no more dead troopers now. The 3 goodies battle their way up the temple corridor, only to find 2 badass dark grey zombie troopers who at least put up a good fight and a Star Destroyer ready to blast off. Seeing that they need more time, Thrawn orders Morgan Elsbeth to buy them more, and off she goes, flaming green sword in hand, to fight, not for the Empire, but for Dathomir. Cue some kick-ass fighting, flame green sword versus 2, then 1 of Ahsoka's lightsabers, and loads of really hard-to-kill zombie troopers. Yay! The Star Destroyer moves slowly enough off for Ezra to jump and for Sabine to use the Force to fly him onto it before he easily duffs up 2 onlooking stormtroopers and stealing the armor of one of them. Yet, to Ezra's surprise, Sabine stays behind to help Ahsoka, who didn't quite manage to stop Star Destroyer jumping off into hyperspace. Thrawn and co make it back to Star Wars Galaxy, Dathomir to be precise. We get another glimpse at Middle-earth, this time with Lord Balin surveying his meagre fiefdom. In silence, again, on top of an old statue of a king or something. And Shin, Emo Padawan, returning to camp. Ezra arrives at a New Republic fleet in a large Imperial shuttle that he stole from the biggest, most precise, observant brains of the Empire and his badass-looking battalion of troopers and Uber droids without them even noticing that one of their few remaining large shuttles was missing. Bahira and Chopper are actually waiting for Ezra to see and happy to see him home. And Ahsoka is content with being where she's at, with Sabine thinking she sees shadows, only for it to be Anakin's Jedi ghost. And that's that.
Very entertaining there, Graham. Yes, we've got a lot to unpick here, haven't we? Before we do, though, I've just realised actually I am as inconsistent with this show as Disney Star Wars is, because I realise for that holding page today, I put parts 7 and 8 using the numerals rather than the words part 7 and 8. So there you go. I'm following the Star Wars tradition of not knowing whether it's an episode, a part, a chapter, or what. So there you go. And that wasn't done on purpose, but
that's fine. We all read numbers as well as words, so
yes,
you're forgiven.
There you go. There you have it. But before we move on to the next thing, let's just take this time to thank the maker. Alrighty, so as with every episode of this show, and I'm sure we'll dig into this when we get onto our own thoughts. These episodes were written by Dave Filoni, who's also the executive producer, showrunner, etc. But in terms of directing, for part 7, Dreams and Madness, that was directed by Geeta Vasant Patel. Now, I don't believe Geeta's directed any Star Wars before this one. However, her television directing credits go back to 2014. They are quite impressive. She started with the TV series Meet the Patels, worked on that, and then did Survivor's Remorse in 2016, and has since directed episodes of The Mick, Fresh Off the Boat, Speechless, The Mindy Project, Champions, Atypical, Superstore, Chambers, Dead to Me, Bittersweet, Runaways, The Magicians, The Great, P-Valley, and House of the Dragon. So a lot of directing credits there in television before coming to this episode of Ahsoka. So good credits there. And part 8, the Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord, I keep wanting to say wardrobe for obvious reasons, was directed by Rick Famuyiwa. Now, we've talked about Rick before on this show because he has actually directed quite a bit of Star Wars, and we've covered other series here. So just to briefly recap, his directing goes back to 2015. Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm realized I'm on the wrong list. Here we go. Right. Yes. With the film Dope. And then has worked on 8 episodes of The Mandalorian as director. So quite a lot of credits to his name there for Star Wars. So that's really good. I'm sorry. My computer, I hate it when it does this, is actually playing up. Oh my God, how we rely on computers. So here we go. Right. Yes. Sorry. My apologies. 6 episodes of The Mandalorian, not 8. He was down as producer on 8 episodes of that. But yes, as I mentioned, Dope, They Call Me Magic, the TV series. We Will Be Monsters, The Mandalorian, and now Ahsoka. So yes, a name we've talked about before on this. So that's this week's Thanking the Makers. Right, Graham, bit of fun then. So before we get into our thoughts, we're going to have a look at the references and Easter eggs, which is always fun in these shows, as they tend to be one big member burying themselves. But let's get some Bantha milk, blue.
I've got rid of the Bantha and I've just gone for brown beer. Brown.
There you go. A galaxy drink. So
it's actually, to be fair, it is on brand here. So
fair enough.
All right.
So, Graham, I always let you lead with this. Is there anything in particular that stood out? I mean, yes, you know, there's, and I always caveat, sorry, I haven't done it this week, but I always caveat here that this is just a bit of a laugh. It's stuff we pick out on our first watch. There are channels out there that specialize in going into every single Easter egg and reference there is, and they do it in much more granular detail than we do. But we like to have a little bit of a fun bit with this, because I always say to people that as a Star Wars fan, I probably know more about Star Wars than the average or the casual fan. However, I'm by no means an aficionado in any way, shape, or form. I'm not well versed in the expanded universe and the new canon novels and all of that sort of thing. So I'm learning as I go here as well. So that's just my get out of jail free card there.
And if you're at second year Padawan level, I'm at year one or 4-year-old Padawan who's a bit force sensitive here. So there's not much for me this week, Keith, apart from, as mentioned earlier, the stealing of a stormtrooper's armor as Star Wars A New Hope.
Many Star Wars, yes.
Actually, fair play. But yeah, that first one there. There's the references back to Clone again. I've not seen Rebels, but Clone Wars with the witches, Dathomir, and all their shenanigans and green eyes and how they create another witch. I'm sure there was the green sword, using those cheap-looking green effects to make it were a part of that too. I didn't really notice anything on the dialogue part, and then we've got everything that is Star Wars, from TIE fighters to misfiring stormtroopers, which always makes us kind of giggle too. I'm thinking that there was another one. I've talked myself into distraction there as well. There was one in the previous episode which I don't think will come to me now, but apart from like the Jedi creation of lightsabers and the like as well, no, I'm it's gone. I've talked myself out of remembering one more, but yeah, there's so much here I bet you I've missed, because I was just, maybe because I was rolling my eyes through these two episodes, I missed a few references.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one of the things they do that I'll say straight up front here is in part 7, they do actually kind of clarify where this is in the Star Wars timeline, because they reference events from The Mandalorian season 3, because they talk about Moff. Carson Taver talks about Moff Gideon and stuff when they're in that little Senate hearing. He stands up and mentions that. So we have got a little bit of clarification, because I know some people were confused as to whether obviously Ahsoka is introduced in The Mandalorian, but whether or not this was before she met Luke, and obviously that is absolutely confirmed that it's after she's met Luke. So so that was one thing that was sort of confirmed in dialogue, if you like. But in terms of other Easter eggs and bits and pieces, firstly from part 7, I mean, obviously we get C3PO, we get Anthony Daniels reprising his role once again as C3PO with the first line, "You don't need to see my identification," which again is a kind of another little New Hope reference there. Always good to see 3PO. Weird though, he seemed, and I don't know whether you can see in that picture there, but he seemed to lean back a lot. Did you notice that, or was that just me?
I didn't notice that. I heard his voice was sounding as if it was a man of a certain older age, an elderly age. I got that, and I thought that was actually in character because C3PO is ancient now anyway. But I didn't notice the leaning back. No.
Yeah, I know.
Hmm.
It was just something that really kind of stood out to me. I was thinking, oh dear, presuming Anthony Daniels is actually in the costume as well, which I don't know whether he is or whether he just provided the voice. But I was thinking, oh my God, has he got some back issues now? Because 3PO was really laid back compared to what we're used to seeing. I mean, he was never the most laid back character, was he?
Yeah, that's a good point. No, literally highly strung,
Yeah,
as as droid designs go.
exactly. And of course, we get mention of Leia here because, of course, he is come representing Leia to help Hera out in this scene. So that there was that, and obviously, when Anakin, we see Anakin again as a hologram this time. So we've seen him as a Force ghost. We've seen him in a flashback, yeah, and we've seen him as a hologram. So he's been all of them in this one, yeah, which is good. But when he's training, he drops a few names of characters from other parts of Star Wars. So he mentions General Grievous, who obviously we saw in Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. He was a character in that, and he was also, of course, in the Clone Wars animation series. He mentions Count Dooku, who, of course, was played by Sir Christopher Lee in both Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Certainly at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, anyway, and again has appeared as an animated character in quite a bit of the Clone Wars and some of the other animated series over the years. And Asajj Ventress is mentioned. Now, that was a character that was first introduced in the original Clone Wars 2D animated series, which I'm not even sure is actually considered canon anymore. But this character also did appear in Clone Wars, the main series as well, and has cropped up in other media like novels and stuff. And she was a Sith lightsaber wielding Sith who was the apprentice of Count Dooku. So it's great that they've kind of mentioned those characters on screen here, in the live action format. So that was something else that stood out. The other thing, and we'll get into this a bit, I think, when we talk about our thoughts and whatever on the show. But we've talked a lot about how this really leans into one's knowledge of both the Clone Wars animated series and Star Wars Rebels animated series, because this is in very, very much a sequel to those shows. But it also draws heavily on the in canon Timothy Zahn Thrawn novels that have been written. He's written since the Disney takeover. So this isn't part of Legends, but there was a trilogy of novels, one of which is called Thrawn Alliances. And Thrawn actually references this because he mentions that he knew Anakin Skywalker. And in that novel, I've not read it, but apparently I've looked at the basic plot synopsis. And during that novel, he meets Anakin Skywalker, and then years later, or a few years later, meets Darth Vader. And because he is this brilliant tactician and whatever, he actually puts it together and realizes that Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader are the same person, and all this sort of thing. So there's reference to that in episode 7 when he's talking about the fact that that he knew and he'd encountered them before. So as I said, that's actually referencing other media as well, in this case novels. That we've also got, I think Zeb is name dropped as training recruits, and we obviously saw Zeb with Carson Teva in Mandalorian season 3 in one of the scenes. Obviously, Zeb being one of the Rebels characters that hasn't been shown in this series. What else? And also, I've put a picture there of Leia and a picture of Sabine, because when Ahsoka reaches out to, with the Force, and Sabine feels it, that's very much like when Luke's hanging from above Bespin from the bottom of Cloud City, and he calls out to Leia, and Leia knows to turn the ship around in Empire Strikes Back. So I'm sure that was a blatant reference there. Looking at part 8, what have we got? So I'm just trying to remember. I've plucked some of these visuals off the internet, and I'm like, why did I put that there? Oh yeah, I think that first one is just to show that Morgan Elspeth wields the blade of Talzin. I think that's how they pronounced it. And that was something, again, that was something that the Night Sisters did back in the Clone Wars episodes. I think there was a character called Mother Talzin, I believe. Again, not an aficionado, did see them a long time back, but that's mentioned there. Obviously, the title is, of course, inspired by The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I don't know whether that's because of the reference, obviously C.S. Lewis's novel, Narnia, being, a world between worlds, a little bit like what we get here in Star Wars. So I guess that was, Filoni trying to be clever or whatever with that reference. We also, when Ezra's building his new lightsaber, the blade emitter at the end is very similar, and I tried to find a picture on the internet there of Kanan Jarrus, who is his master. It's a very similar design, which sort of makes sense here as well. And they also, I think he drops a line about the blade being too thin or something. And I don't know if that was a little bit of a meta joke to the fact that the stylized look of the animation in the Clone Wars, people often complain that the lightsaber blades look too thin. I don't know, maybe that's just me stretching there. But we also, of course, we get a few vocal references as well, like Sabine's training when she says she'll try, and then she corrects herself and says, no, I'll do. Is a little bit like Yoda, do or do not, there is no try. I'm sure that was obviously very intentional. We literally get Death Troopers in this. Again, we'll talk about the sort of zombie stormtrooper element when we get into this. But what I found quite interesting is in the original expanded universe, which is now obviously Legends, but it's not canon anymore. But there was a novel written by Joe Schreiber, and it was basically the first attempt at making a Star Wars horror story, and it was called Death Troopers. Now, I've not read this book. As I said, it's not even canon nowadays, but as we know, they do like to go and cherry pick things from legends. So, you know, I'm not sure if they went back and sort of got that, or inspired by the cover that I've got there of that novel with the stormtroopers. But we also had death troopers in this, and as I said, they were literally death troopers in this episode. What else? And then the other thing is, again, this is a thing that goes back to Clone Wars, is we briefly see Ahsoka looking at something flying in the distance, and that is an owl that I believe called Morai, that Ahsoka has as a sort of spiritual guide in a episode of Clone Wars, which again, you know, it's expecting us to kind of either do a lot of homework or be familiar with this stuff. So that was there. And then the other thing, I believe there's some reference or some relevance, should I say, to the very Tolkien-esque looking statues at the end. I think there's something called the Mortis Gods, and again, that relates to that same episode where Ahsoka finds the owl as her guiding spirit. So I don't know if they were trying to set something up there. You obviously mentioned the Ezra, you know, using the stormtrooper outfit thing, which he did a lot in the show, and of course they did in New Hope, as you rightly said. And then finally, I don't know whether this is a retcon or a continuity error or what, but obviously when we see the Force ghost of Anakin at the end, bearing in mind that this takes place, of course, you know, a decade or whatever after, or a few years at least after Return of the Jedi, Anakin is wearing his, you know, Revenge of the Sith, Clone Wars type robes. But obviously, and of course I've got to bring home media into this, as this is the channel, but when Star Wars was released on Blu-ray, they basically, I think it was in 2005, around the time that episode 3 was being made, one of the changes George Lucas made is he changed the Force ghost from Sebastian Shaw to Hayden Christensen. But when he showed him in that, Hayden Christensen's wearing like the sort of white Jedi robes. So I don't know whether it's that the Force ghost appears different to different people, and this is how Luke sees him compared to how Ahsoka sees him. But I don't know. I just thought I'd put that picture there because I thought it was a talky point.
Interesting on that last point. Yeah. I'll go with, you know, ghosts still need to get dressed. You know, there's nighttime, there's daytime. Look at Leia. Leia, when you know, not even a ghost, right? Through Empire Strikes Back, she has so many costume changes.
True.
Yeah. So,
yes.
You know, maybe she gets that through the Force, and all these Jedi really do need to, you know, have a change of clothing, or as with Darth Vader from original Return of the Jedi, just needs to change all the time. You know, just change body too.
Yes. Well, before we get into our nitpicky discussion of the episodes, it's time to never tell me the odds. So, Graham, moving forward, do you want to know the odds, or have you just got a bad feeling about it? What's your, you know, or is this better to discuss once we've got into our certain points of view?
Maybe, or maybe it's just a odds, really. Unfortunately, we'll start off with Ray Stevenson. We won't see him, But a discussion between myself and my daughter after we watched the final episode was, are they going to replace him and keep the Balin Skull storyline going? Which I think, yes, they've invested too much time in a couple of characters there, and he has been talking up a big destiny for himself. So yeah, they'll probably replace him there.
Yeah, I mean, that whole thing, very sad. Sympathies go out to Ray Stevenson's friends and family. Obviously, he was a great actor who left us way too soon. And obviously, this is not the first time this has happened with Star Wars. Obviously, we had Carrie Fisher sadly passed before they'd completed the sequel trilogy. And that they found a sort of workaround on that. Whether it was successful or not, it's a whole nother discussion. But they did that. But that actually does open up a little point that now you've mentioned that I want to talk about regarding Star Wars, and that is, it is about recasting actually, because obviously you had a recasting of a younger Han Solo for the film Solo. But since then, obviously that film didn't do very well for various reasons. I don't believe it was anything to do with the actor personally, but since then, Disney Star Wars has taken this thing that rather than recasting, they've gone with the recreating characters, as well, either bringing them back if the actors passed, like they did with Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One and Leia at the end of Rogue One and stuff, or creating a deep fake younger version like they did with Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian. They did the de-aged Mark Hamill on the body of a stand-in, and all that sort of thing. All of this obviously very expensive to do as well. And then in this, we've had a lot of de-aged Hayden Christensen, as young Anakin and stuff in this. So they've kind of taken that path. But what are you, obviously, I agree. I think Balin's, of course, was set up to be in more of this, most definitely. Do you think they're going to recast, or are they going to try and get permission from the estate to fake it using?
Yeah, hadn't thought about the latter. Yeah, because ILM have always, to use the old adage, push the envelope, right? They've always done that. They've always, right from pre-ILM to, if you've all seen, what's it called, Light and Magic, the brilliant documentary on
amazing
Disney Plus. Yeah, brilliant one. They were inventing from the get-go, and they pushed it all the time. So I hadn't thought of that, to be honest with you, but where they could, they need permission, all right. But that would be an interesting take on it rather than recasting him after all. Those are my thoughts. If I was ILM, if I was in the ILM mindset and I was doing like the deep fakes and what they did with de-aging everybody, it's well within their capabilities to do that. And it would seem in some ways less strange than just having another actor. And it would be to look like Ray Stevenson. It'd be a shame that everybody else. But again, it was a tragic loss, and for such I thought one of the best performances of the entire series was him.
I agree.
That character.
I agree, and I'm saying that not just out of respect of what's happened, but I honestly, if Ray Stevenson was still with us, I'd be saying, my God, he's amazing in this. I want to see more of that character,
So, totally.
I don't know, because as I said, Star Wars has gone the like the opposite way of what they've done with Star Trek, for example, where with Star Trek, which we talk a lot about on this channel as well, but they've gone with taking classic characters and recasting them as with younger versions. I mean, they've actually done it, twice, because of course they did it with the J.J. Abrams Kelvin timeline reboot films and stuff, where we had Kirk and whatever, nearly a decade before we see them in the original series. And of course they're now doing that with Strange New Worlds as well, and we've got Ethan Peck playing Spock, and again these characters. But I mean, do they recast Han, Luke, and Leia and have new younger actors playing these classic characters? That's the question, isn't it? Is what do they do? Because they've kind of taken the stance of going down the expensive technology way of doing it, which has had mixed results, because some people like it, other people find it a little bit uncanny in places. And I'm more for actor continuity. Like, when you get another actor, unless they're playing, a character that's divorced from the character, by some years, that always takes a bit of getting used to as well, doesn't it? So
no, I think I think where they missed a trick with Peter Cushing and playing Grand Moff Tarkin, but then de-aging him at the end of Rogue One was not having him full body with the slippers.
Yes, indeed. Yes, yeah. But I didn't understand why they just didn't let that actor that performed him play Tarkin. It was kind of like, because he did his voice and his performance was good enough, and he looked quite similar. It's I don't know. It's a tricky one. It's funny actually, because I was thinking back to Marvel in the first Ant-Man film, and at the beginning of that they've got a scene that takes place sometime in the late 80s or whatever, and I remember in that scene they used sort of the three techniques that you'd use. So you had a de-aged Michael Douglas, de-aged to the point, that he would have been in like sort of Wall Street or whatever back then. So they had a de-aged Michael Douglas. They used prosthetics on Hayley Atwell to make her, 25, 30 years older than we've seen her and her character, in the Agent Carter show and all of that sort of stuff. So they did that. And then Howard Stark, they actually used an older actor to replace what's his name? Was it Dominic Cooper who played
Dominic Cooper? Yeah, he did. Yeah, in Agent Carter.
And of course that actor had already been in on the videotapes to Tony playing the older Howard Stark, and all this. But there's a scene where they're kind of using all three. You've got a digitally de-aged character. You've got a character, an actor in prosthetics to age up, and then you've got a different actor altogether playing an older version of a character. And I just sort of thought, I always thought that was quite amusing that they'd sort of gone with all the ways you can do it, or the ways you could do it at that time.
Indeed, yeah. There isn't anybody else now. There. So let's see. ILM are fully capable of spinning up and having a CG character involved. They can do it, so it wouldn't surprise me that they would go down that road. Even perhaps, dare I say it, using AI to take the voice of Ray Stevenson and get a match for Baylan as well.
Yeah, using the tools, wearing as it is. But I mean, obviously, it leaves a lot of ethical and moralistic questions, doing all of this stuff for one thing. But also, I mean, the thing is, the technology is getting better all the time, and already from when we saw a face replaced actor as Mark Hamill in Mandalorian season 2 or whatever, by the time we got into season 3, was it season 3 or the Book of Boba Fett? You see, I'm so confused now. It was the Book of Boba Fett, wasn't it? By the time we got into that, the technology had got that much better again, hadn't it? And it looked even more believable most of the time. And then sometimes it's like, it's it's an interesting one. Sorry, we've gone off on a bit of a tangent, I know, but it was just because you happened to mention that, and it got me thinking. What is Star Wars going to do, because they handle this quite differently to to Star Trek, for example.
Yeah, very much so. No, the other part is that full on satire here. What'll happen in season 2 is that Ahsoka or Sabine will get to Star Wars Galaxy, and because this is all just a logic puzzle, you'll have to swap Ezra back, so it'll be Sabine. No, it won't be. It'll be Ahsoka and Sabine. And in season 3, then they'll swap around again and they'll try and get around. Meanwhile, Thrawn is on the other side there, and all logic goes to bloody hell.
Yes, because I mean, we don't actually know at this stage whether we're getting another season or a movie or what, do we? We don't know what the deal is.
I know we know there's a movie coming. Anything's now been set up by that last step, well, by the last third of the last episode of the finale there. Thrawn's got a hell of a lot, away from Disney Star Wars. There's enough material there to build something out. And also, our guesses have been that through this particular set of characters and storylines, they will start to join up the dots to link to the sequel trilogy as well.
I mean, there's two things that this could all potentially solve in its storytelling. One is obviously the rise of the First Order and how they come into power by the time of The Force Awakens. And the other, I roll my eyes as I say it, but the other one is the resurrection of Emperor Palpatine.
Well, we've got all those.
We got all those
coffins now, which are probably the Night Sisters. There's probably going to be black magic. So you had all those, the Sith choir, as I call them, right at the end of the last film that I don't care to remember the name of.
Rise of Skywalker. Yes.
That's the one. Which really used to do, it should have been called the Sith Choir. They should have made a musical. They should have been daring, like they've done with the Joker Part 2, make a musical. Why not? So they'll probably have loads of Sith, and there's probably Sith and Night Sisters, or they're going to have sex, and they're going to have babies, and they're going to be all Sith, and then they're going to be singers. And then right at the end, when Palpatine, says, "Oh, I'm your grandfather," which is like, already been done, because we've had. I am your father. Now let's go. I am your grandfather. Here's my male voice Sith choir back here, and it's going to go there, and we know where it's going to go.
Right. I think we are pushing towards a certain point of view, don't you? Let's do it.
A bit too cynical now. We need to pause.
Okay, lightsabers are ready. So, yeah, all right. Well, this is where we sort of get into the real discussion, even though we've kind of discussed some things a bit off topic and whatever there with other actors and CGI and all this stuff. But this is where we talk about, what we really think of the episodes and the season overall and all of this sort of thing. So, Graham, as always, I'm going to let you start, and I've got lots of thoughts. Don't know whether I'll get to all of them, but I've got thoughts. But where are you at with these? Because we've not. Just to let the audience know, we make a point of not discussing any of this until we're recording this show, so that we don't influence one another. I don't know about you, Graham, but I try and avoid where I can reviews and other videos. Sometimes it's hard to avoid those sort of things, but again, so that I can just be in my own thoughts and digest it and not be too influenced by anybody else or any other points of view on it. It's just my own, really. So anyway, yes.
What do you think? Okay, I'm going to get myself into a more positive frame of mind firstly. So that is that.
You usually are quite positive about all this. I think I've been the negative Nelly more.
Yeah, no, these last 2 episodes, mate. Anyway, how was I? So yes, so this season, this series, then, even from episode 1, I was genuinely surprised. It was a pleasant surprise too that they were trying to be different. Again, I don't have the experience of Rebels, all of Rebels, I should say. I've only seen the first couple of episodes. So, for me, it was all new, and I thought Dave Filoni was doing a brilliant job because I didn't feel I was missing anything. I knew there were references to Rebels, etc., but it was good, decent enough writing that it was intriguing. There's new characters in here. I know everybody was banging on it's a sequel, but actually, fair play. You've got Baylan Skoll, you've got Emo Padawan, right? Shin, indeed. So you got them, and then of course you got a plethora of others, and of course we brought in Thrawn, and we had Morgan Elsbeth from that kick-ass, that amazing season 2 Mandalorian episode as well, right? And then her link to the Night Sisters, some really good stuff there. My daughter loved it more than I did, which is great because now we've got the next generation of Star Wars fans really getting into this. And then there was lots of promise and talk in part 6, which all in part 7 and then part 8 completely missed the mark. And it was all bluff and talk and bluster, to the point where my daughter, for part 8, yes, when we saw the episode, she was like, "Oh, I'm not sure I actually enjoyed that." And she was so enthusiastic about everything. She even enjoyed part 7. We had a big discussion where a daddy did actually then just piss on her firework because I was just like, "Oh, that was just, what the hell was that?" Well, there's nothing really what happened there. But she was still enthusiastic. But unfortunately, it did take a nosedive. And for the next generation of somebody to go, to just sigh, that's a big shame because we were so enthusiastic. Again, we didn't really look into reviews. I haven't been on the socials for this one. I've read some reviews because I just want to catch up after I've talked to you, of course. And I've been on this. Everything we've talked about Ray Stevenson. There was a deliberate way of the characters, and they were doing things in their own way. And then when we had action sequences, they were thrilling, and it was almost as if they, for those parts, they not quite like Andor, where they earned the right to have a kick-ass Star Wars moment. They really lent into lightsaber fights, and they really lent into the thrills. And I know they, Dave Filoni dug deep with all of canon or legends for Star Wars here, and there was a lot of fanboy stuff, right? So positive, there was lots of there was a lot of brilliance here. We'll stop there before we get into part 7 and 8.
But the thing is, I'm finding it interesting because I what you're saying there, because obviously I was quite negative about episode 6 when we did our last one, and I sort of said, nah, you know, like you know, Grand Admiral Thrawn's supposed to be this brilliant tactician. He's been stranded there for a decade. You know, he hasn't been able to find Ezra in that time, and you know, Sabine just sort of turns up, finds him hanging out with you know,
I have a theory about that.
you know, shell-like, rock-like beings that have catapults as weapons and vehicles that move at about 2 miles an hour, right? And in this huge, vast plains and whatever, and he hasn't been able to find them. And
yeah, I've got a theory about that.
And then obviously Sabine and Ezra, you know, who haven't seen each other. They had you know, they were like family, and then he got ripped away, and they hadn't seen each other in a decade. And when they meet, it's just like an airport hug where somebody's been on a 2-week trip, you know. And I was just like, what, you know, and I was like, I don't fucking buy that at all. You know, I was just kind of like really hard on it. And I know you were a bit, because I.
No, you were right. You were right about the last bit of 6 there with the Ezra Sabine. But my theory on Thrawn and his troopers and the underused, in the end, Enoch, is that firstly, there's 5. He had 5 lieutenants, right, and they're all brothers. There was Enoch, B Enoch, C Enoch, D Enoch, and Enoch.
Oh dear. I really wanted Enoch to be the Clytus of this. You know what Clytus was to Ming and Flash Gordon. I wanted Enoch to be that dude, and it was he just bought a couple of messages, and that was it. It's like our 2 TIE fighters that you sent have been destroyed. You know, it's like, what?
Of course they have. They're bloody TIE fighters. They're stormtroopers. They all get destroyed, right? Anyway.
Okay, sorry.
My actual theory, joking aside, is right at the beginning when we see Thrawn and he talks, and everyone's all battle hardened. I think that it's either they've missed a trick, they're going to spin off. It's going to be a novel or a bunch of comics are going to come out. Fill that blank, because in that period, he hasn't been able to find Ezra because they've been at war with something or somebody else. That's why they're all a bit blasted away, yeah? So I see that Thrawn and everyone have just been distracted completely, and they're just settling in now to going, right, send out the messages, get all of this. He's found the Knights Sisters, and they've been able to get in touch with Morgan Elspeth because he didn't, they did. No. So him finding them. And that's why he said our numbers have depleted. And unless they've turned to cannibalism because they run out of supplies and their rationing efforts just weren't going anywhere, I think that's where they've missed. He could have hinted a bit more. That's my theory. My headcanon is he's been at war.
But the other thing is, you know, in part 6, when the 3 Night Sisters do that, you know, the triangle thing to locate the Jedi. Yeah, right. Well, Ezra was a Jedi, right? So in 10 years, and those sisters have been with him a little while, and it's like, hold on, in all that time they hadn't done that before. It's just like, I don't know, just this whole thing doesn't. I just don't buy it. None of that holds together. What I really think about this whole thing is, I was thinking about it, and we'll go into specific points and whatever. But generally, I feel like it's something that, on a surface level, you know, we've got lightsabers and action sequences and you know, the costumes, the makeup, the props, the sets, the visual effects, the music, you know. The performance, it's all fine, it's all good, but it just doesn't hold any scrutiny. If you start trying to, and I don't know whether that's Star Wars in general, I don't know, but if you start trying to sort of look at the I hate to even use logic when we're talking about something so fantastical as this
You
anyway.
can't. Yeah, no.
But
I understand.
when,
Yeah, but
you know,
you've always switched off
storytelling
for Star
it doesn't
Wars.
really hold together. The storytelling, I don't know. It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, but
But
we
anyway,
did switch off with Star Wars when we were kids, didn't we? Okay, Empire Strikes Back was just the
well,
outlier. Now there was just you hold that to scrutiny, and a
yeah.
lot
I
of
mean,
that is absolutely awesome still.
exactly. I mean, it's the hero's journey and all this. But I mean, I don't know whether I don't know whether this is just nostalgia or what. But the end of A New Hope, or when Luke takes Vader's mask off in Return of the Jedi and whatever, I'm those things actually get to me emotionally. I mean, I'm actually you know, like I almost want to well up at the end of A New Hope, yeah, and the same with you know, Anakin telling him, you know, tell your sister you were right about me and all of this stuff. I said I don't know whether it's just because those were feelings from my childhood or something, but I didn't, you know, all the reunions here. So you had first Ezra and Sabine, then you had Ezra and Ahsoka, and then you had Ezra and Hera, right, and Chopper. And I guess the most emotional one of all of them was bloody Chopper, right? I mean, honestly, it's like, you know, these characters were super close. They were a family that fought, you know, that were the foundation of the Rebel Alliance, and they were together for you know, years doing that. And then Ezra gets torn away to save them and save the galaxy from Thrawn and all this. He gets torn away to another galaxy, and they don't see him in a decade. Yeah, and they're all 10 years older. And it's just like, oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah, you know, quippy comebacks and everything. And I'm thinking, no, that this should be really emotional. It, you know, I don't know. I was just left really cold by all of that, really cold. And it's like, I have to say, I was thinking about this, and Thrawn in particular, right? So Dave Filoni, and again, I don't know. We all know there's a lot of moving parts to shows that are this expensive and you know, complicated, and Disney's got a hand in things, and you know, all this sort of stuff. I know that, but and of course we had COVID and all sorts of things have happened during the development of all this. But Dave Filoni is credited for writing every episode of this. And I don't know whether there was a writer's room or anything. I doubt it, because otherwise other writers would have been credited. And it's a bit like season 3 of The Mandalorian was credited completely to Jon Favreau for that season, for the last season. And I'm not sure, you know, that these are good things, because the scripts of these, to me, felt like they needed a second, and another, not a second, because they would have obviously had second drafts, but you know, another draft. And I think Thrawn, and again, I don't know why Disney and Lucasfilm aren't doing this. Timothy Zahn not only created the character in the original Legend stuff, but he came back to write the books that are now official canon, of which there have been several, right? He is the person that should be writing Thrawn. Yeah, okay. Filoni's created a lot of the other characters and knows them and writes for them and all this, but I think, because I thought, I love Lars Mikkelsen, great actor. Although I can't help but think Grand Admiral Paunch now after our after your comment last week. But Grand Admiral Paunch, you know, but Lars Mikkelsen's great. I love his voice. I like what they've done with the makeup and the look of the character and all this. But I don't know. I didn't, in these episodes, these last 3 episodes or whatever, I haven't thought, oh my God, this is one of the most terrifying guys in the galaxy, and he's this wonderful military tactician and all of this sort of stuff. To be honest, he's come across like a bit of a buffoon. Or is that just me?
Every time there's a few deaths, or there's something crashes and burns, he's like, that's fine. Let's move on to this. I'm okay with it because
Yeah,
all we need to do is
it's all
escape.
part of the plan.
Yeah, but you're going to escape with a bunch of fucking coffins, and you know, apart from Enoch, you've already lost 4 of his brothers.
Yeah. I
You know,
mean, to be
Enoch's
fair,
working on.
he does achieve that. I mean, like, if you want to say who wins at the end of this, if you want to call it a finale, I mean, hardly, but he wins. It works. His plan works, and he gets back
With him,
there. And
yeah.
he's so. I'm not disputing that, but I just felt like he made lots of like questionable decisions. I mean, in episode 6 or part 6, sorry, when there's that battle and they said, I thought that was really quite rubbish when they send in the troops and all this, and I was just like, really, that it just feels so crap, and I don't know.
Yeah, so everything that we saw, part 8 as well, especially, well, not part 7 and 8, where he's like, oh yes, let's send. He's contradicting himself all the time. His single vision is to get away, and then it's just like, right, send these in. Oh, they've been killed. That's fine. Send them in. Do this. Yeah. So there was no consistency to him. Apart from part, I disagree. Part 6, I thought it was menacing. I thought they built up ready for part 7, where those Purgils coming in are just, it's going to be an absolute, it's going to be carnage. There's going to be,
And it wasn't, was
stakes are going to be the stakes, blown up whale stakes.
Yeah, get it. Yeah.
Set high. How the hell is, I was just thinking, how is Ahsoka and Huyang going to escape from this? And then you've got that built up, and you've been told the throne is this tactician. You're like, oh my god, the next 2 episodes are just going to be cat and mouse, and he's just going to be playing with them. Whereas beginning of part 7 was boom, 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 some mines that were set there, and the Purgils fuck off. Is it?
Yeah.
Was that it? Hang on a moment.
Yeah.
I removed from my summary because it was getting too long earlier that I thought, maybe the mine setter, the space mine setter, they didn't get the memo from Thrawn. Maybe it was an ill communication through Enoch that he didn't tell them to, or through Morgan Elsbeth to whatever it was, kill with prejudice and what have you, destroys prejudice. But no, that started, and then everything else was just him faffing about, looking important. So I just thought he was poorly written, and there was no tactics. You had one strategy, and everything else under the tactical level of that was absolutely awful. Character then was not believable at all. He constantly had to go back and ask for favors, cap in hand, to the Night Sisters to do this, that, and the other. So yeah, the point of delaying all the goodies getting to him so he could blast off, and he nearly even didn't blast off without the goodies getting to him anyway. So actually, they were epic fails all the way. So
yeah, he doesn't
six, I
feel
thought,
like,
right up into the Ezra meet intro at the end, I thought was absolutely sinister, brilliant. We've got the mood here, and it set up something. So I thought, in my brain, in my expectations, the whole headcanon was ready to go. And this is going to be awesome. And then, yeah, it fizzled out before it even started.
yeah. I just felt there was a little threat there. I mean, I say it's obviously it's easy for us to sort of, sit here and criticize this stuff, and in another world, I'd have loved to have been, somehow creatively involved in this stuff, whether it's acting in it or directing it or whatever. So obviously Filoni's got the dream job, but I don't know. The other thing that bothered me was, and this, I'm still on episode of part 7 at the moment, but we get that kind of, Ezra's sat in the 2 mile an hour buggy thing with his rock people and stuff, right? And Sabine comes and he goes, "Oh well, so the rebellion did win then." And and she says, "Yeah, the she mentions the Battle of Endor." But they say, which kind of really annoyed me, that she says something like, "Yeah, Palpatine is believed dead," or something, right? Or believed to be overthrown, right? And again, whether or not that's chucked in there because of the sequel trilogy, I don't know. But I'm like, hold on a second. Why is she not talking about Luke Skywalker and you know what I mean? It's like, it was just kind of put off as a bit of a footnote, and I was like, really,
Yeah, why are
really?
the Skywalkers in this? Because they're still around. Yeah, they're still there around. But yeah, it's
I was just
absolutely
like,
massive.
so I had a bit of a problem with that as well. But yeah, I don't know.
And what I think, Keith, overall, in 7 and 8, Dave Filoni pulled his punches. He absolutely pulled them, because you were saying about, oh yeah, he's got the dream job and this and the other. But actually, when we are when we are writing and when we are creating our stories, we're never getting to the end where we're going, oh well, let's. If you're making an action or a thriller, you want to make it a bit more. You really want to make it thrilling, right? But you don't pull your punch on a drama. You don't do that. If you've set it up, and you've been, you've got the plot there, you've got the conflict and the drama. You don't just then pull your punch back just so you're setting up the second season. Leave it on a proper hangover. Leave it on a proper cliffhanger. Why don't you?
Yeah.
So I don't understand where that thought process was to do that, to not
it was all
be dramatic. You didn't have to see Wales getting blown to absolute bits. You didn't have to. They did. He did have a head beheading happening off screen. Fine. I know there's some Disney-ness to it, but you're looking at a 12 certificate here, and I was just looking at some of the action was kind of pulled back a bit. The choreography was more dance over actual fighting, the lightsaber scenes. A bit okay. It's less thrilling now, because what you had, there wasn't that over emotion that we had earlier in the season. When you watch Return of the Jedi, which I love, the 3 fight scenes that are happening. You've got the Battle of Endor, you've got all the ships going into the new Death Star, and then you've got Luke and Vader. When Luke is absolutely, trying to destroy Darth Vader, I still feel that. Right, there's a little thriller, there's emotion there. In these, they were literally just like as if they were dancing sometimes. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of pulling of the punches and making it look pretty.
Yeah, it's funny actually. I really, because I thought I was going to be the, as I said, the negative Nigel here, and you were going to be like praising this more. But I really did feel, in terms of this finale and stuff. Well, I mean, we're getting to that part now, I guess. But I felt like it was all build up and no real payoff. And I also feel that the show, yeah, it's been great with the fanboy and the nindies and all this, but we've had plenty of lightsaber, all the stuff people said, criticized that Andor didn't have, like lightsabers and all this. We had all of, and force, using and all that. We had all of that, which is great. But as I said, it just, I've thought about it since watching it, and it's just I've got so many questions, and they're not questions that are nice setups for the next series or the next movie or whatever it is. They're just questions because it doesn't it doesn't hold up to any scrutiny. It was thin, and dare I say it, style over substance in some instances. And I'm just, yeah, I mean, it was a for me it was better. I think I enjoyed it more than Mandalorian season 3, which obviously as you know, I wasn't a massive fan of. But again, in terms of this hasn't been great. It's had great moments, but overall it hasn't been great, I have to say. And yeah, I mean, let's talk about, as I said, let's talk about the last episode then. So um some real plot convenience and pretty stupid things happen, right? Like from the crashing of the ship to the two TIE fighters to just a load of old nonsense. Quite a bit of it
Yeah,
was, right?
there was supposed danger by sending TIE fighters out. That just slows things down. Yeah, I think that the um, Death Troopers was actually cool, and I thought, right,
Yeah.
we're raising the stakes here. We've got something, but in the end, it was just there was no danger. It was everyone's pissing onto the wall, not into the urinal. They come
Mhm,
alive. They're doing the same thing again.
mhm.
They're just, they're running away. Ezra's, chopping a door panel and the door shuts. Wow, you've got this old stone granite temple with electronic metal doors on it. I mean, Night Sisters, what the hell do they need with all of that? They've got it's granite. It's an old castle, effectively, and then you've got all this. It's like what? That didn't make sense. Then you get in a fight scene, you get two uber zombies, grey clad zombies, and there, right now, there's danger. So we had about 3 minutes of danger, and and they get split up to the goodies, and then Morgan Elsbeth, and then the Ahsoka's lightsaber gets cut, and she's down to one, and now we've got some excitement. So at least we did have that. I had that moment there,
Yeah. Do
and
you
then
know what though? Do you know something? Sorry, why we're on that point. Something I didn't like. It's just something I think it makes it less interesting. So I really like, we've got Sabine Wren in live action now, and the actress, is it Natasha Lou Bordizzo, who plays her, has brought her to life really well, looks the part, looks like the animated, character looked. And that was a really interesting character. And I think I said last episode that if the character was somebody that was efficient with a lightsaber, okay, but could not necessarily master the Force, and obviously, still wields the Mandalorian blasters as well as a lightsaber and all of the other Mandalorian gauntlets and all of the special equipment. I think, and also it's consistent then with what you had in Rebels, which obviously ran for 4 seasons with that character. I think that made the character of Sabine more interesting. But no, now, she can use the Force, and we've got another Jedi character in this. And, the cynic in me just thinks, this is a typical Disney, Kathleen Kennedy, the Force is female thing, that we've got to make, of course, we've got to make that character a Jedi. And I just think Ezra was a Jedi, Ahsoka's a Jedi. It would have been really cool if Sabine had been like the, the character that I almost want to say like a sort of mixture of Han Solo and Princess Leia. So a character that is, you know, a gun wielder, but can use a lightsaber, would have been, you know, and all of this sort of thing. But of course, they've had to, you know, make her a Jedi, and she learns. I mean, we get, you know, in episode 1, she can't move a cup. In other episodes, you know, she's tried to force move things and hasn't been able to. In this one, granted, in a life or death situation with the Death Trooper, she's able to, you know, summon a lightsaber. Kind of get that. That sort of makes sense. But in the very same scene, she's then able to force propel Ezra over this massive leap, you know, this, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I just sort of thought that was a bad move. I was like, you know,
yeah, the escalation of, because even Luke with Yoda in Empire, that took ages, and
yeah,
all of a sudden Sabine can pick it up, and yeah, it's kind of, if you only gave her another 5 minutes, she'd be doing a Darth Vader from Obi-Wan Kenobi and actually be able to hold the Star Destroyer back.
yeah. I mean, this is it. This is just like the Rey thing in the sequel trilogies as well. It's like, yeah, Luke, you know, in the 3 years between New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, he got to the point where they're on Hoth, where he could summon his lightsaber to him from a few feet away, right? He could just about manage that. But you know, the stuff that I don't know. I had a bit of a problem with that, obviously, as well. And of course the whole, you know, Balin had very little to do in that last episode. I mean, they were trying to sort of set up this, you know, something for him for the future, I guess. But again, it just
didn't go anywhere,
and also Emo put it just turns up and she's going to lead that tribe now, is she, or something? It's just
she's
what?
destined for something greater, apparently.
Yeah. And also the other thing, oh God, the other thing storytelling wise, I've got to say this as well, is so off screen, we don't see any of this, but I did like when you did your summary, you were kind of quite sarcastic about this. So off screen, Ezra manages to take a shuttle, which is really valuable to, with nobody following him at all. He manages to steal a shuttle and fly it back to where the rebels are, with nobody following him or
and how does he know
what?
where they are?
Yeah.
And how does he get to the fleet? And how did the fleet just hang on? And you don't see if there's any danger. Again, the stakes have been raised. There's always that. You could have just had a couple of seconds, a little bit longer, just to raise the stakes. Oh, what's going on?
Well, you could have had a scene on the you know, on the frigate, on the rebel frigate there, where they're like, oh God, you know, we've got something on the scanner. It's an Imperial shuttle. Oh, quick, you know, red alert, whatever, you know, whatever you know, and all this. But no, I mean, there was just no tension at all. It was just like, oh, there he is, and you know, and I'm not being funny. I know it was done for dramatic effect. I get that, but if you were Ezra, would you walk out of the shuttle with the stormtrooper helmet on still? I'm not sure I would, with all those guns trained on me. I would have probably taken the helmet off first.
I would have actually taken off the whole bloody suit, if I'm honest. He'd have been sweating in there.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of sweat I would have had, it'd been up to my knees, if not my hips. They've been sloshing about in sweat.
I mean,
yeah, there was so many plot holes in this.
I know we're nitpicking and ragging on it here, but I was thoroughly underwhelmed by this finale, and I just
disappointed.
Thought, what? I was like, really? Yeah. And I have to say, I think the plan. Again, I'm not sure Disney and Lucasfilm are doing the right thing here, because the utopia that everybody wants, you know, in the business now is they want the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they want the connected universe and all this, right? But when you look at what Marvel did, right, between, if you look at the Infinity Saga, right, that was all movies, right? That was before the TV shows didn't come until phase 4. And I think, again, we've covered some of them on this channel, but it's been sort of, I feel like it's been the whole phase 4 Marvel thing has been diminishing returns. Yeah, it's kind of gone quite downhill. Whereas with this now, they're sort of almost expecting everybody to, watch the TV shows, ready for the movies, but also read the novels and the comics and the video games and all the expanded media stuff. And I just think, I don't know, I just think that's a little bit of a mistake to do.
You see why? Because it's money earning, right? It's diversifying out there, but it's also, you can get a different audiences here. But I take the point, and I totally agree with it. Is that if you're, and we talked about this with the Mandalorian season 3, especially after Book of Boba Fett, right? Is that if you're having to do it all and you're missing some of the story, or there's massive plot holes because you haven't read issue 6 of Star Wars Mandalorian and then watched Ahsoka episode 2 where they're all linked, you failed as a storyteller. You have, because you're just not telling the story correctly. I know, having read comics for years with Marvel and DC doing the same, you'd have one story and you would have to go off onto other, not just issues, but other lines. So you'd have like DC, and then you'd have Batman lines, for instance, telling a story. Always disliked that, because then you're having to actually have that one through, that one whole arc of a story. You're missing things. Where good storytelling is that you can have them, but they just add to the story. There's subplots, or there's other characters, but you can have at least one story going through. And I feel as if Disney have gone that way.
Yeah.
And it just leaves you at worst confused, but at other times you're literally going, as a fan especially, you're going, meh, I don't care anymore.
I've said that whole thing about not really worried about being a completist anymore. That always used to be important, but now I think, well, you can sort of dip in and dip out. But obviously they want you to be completists, of course. But the thing is, obviously Star Wars is very popular and always has been. But I've used this story before, and it said it all to me. So when Solo came out, I went to see it with a friend of mine who is much more of a casual Star Wars fan. Okay, he's not a fanboy, but he had seen all the stuff, up to that point, he'd seen all the Star Wars movies. So he'd seen the original, he'd grown up like me with the original trilogy, seen all of those multiple times, seen the prequel trilogy, had watched the sequel trilogy up to that point, up to the point Solo came out. And then I remember we were watching Solo, and he was like, oh, and I was like, what? And he goes, I got pulled out of the movie. And I said, oh, well, why was that? And he said, well, I was fine with it all. But he said, but I didn't realize that this took place in the prequel series. And he goes, and I didn't realize that Han Solo is actually as old as Ben Kenobi. He said that doesn't make sense, because he said in New Hope, Han used to say, he called Ben old man, and obviously Alec Guinness is a lot older than Harrison Ford. And he said, and I said, well, hold on, what makes you think it was set then? And he said, well, it had Darth Maul in it. And he said Darth Maul got chopped in half at the end of Attack of the Clones, not Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace, right? And fell down a reactor shaft. So he said, so this was set then. And I was like, well, no, actually, Darth Maul, it turns out that he survived, and he's now got robotic legs, and but again, it was because all of that stuff happened in comic books and Clone Wars animation shows and all of this sort of stuff. There was a whole lore around how Darth Maul was brought back from the dead and put back together and all of this sort of thing. But again, a casual fan that's only seen the movies and hasn't watched others wasn't to know that. So he said that Solo was ruined for him because he went through 3/4 of that movie thinking he knew what it was, thinking, oh, this is about 10 years before A New Hope, and it's a young Han, and this is how he meets Chewie, and again, which was a bit crap actually, the way he met Chewie. But anyway, all that stuff and and then it gets to that point, and you get the hologram, talking to the character, and you get Darth Maul in there, and he said at that point he thought he'd missed the point of the whole of the previous part of the movie, because he thought that this was set before the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that Han was 65 years old or something in A New Hope, and I was like, yeah, I know. And I could see why, he wasn't an idiot. He's but I could see why he would put that together. Because again, if you didn't know the expanded media, the expanded universe stuff, how would you know that? And this is the mistake I think they're making. Even with this show, to a certain extent, it's lent very heavily on, Dave Filoni has taken it for granted that people watching this casually will know the animated shows. Even the books now and the video games have come into.
Yeah, I think for the most part, Dave Filoni did that. You didn't have to know about the flaming sword at the end, because it was created there and then. So that was just it looked like a cool thing that would hold up against a lightsaber, right? So that's just one example of many. So I never got as we talked before, the FOMO. I never got the fact that I've missed anything before. If anything, there's a couple of elements that I want to explore more. So I think for the most part, he did that.
Okay.
But which we didn't get with season 3 of Mandalorian. If you didn't watch the 2 episodes or 2.5 episodes of Boba Fett,
yes. Oh yeah, which is totally confusing if you hadn't watched that. Yeah, I get.
I think this just came down to pulling punches at the end and really not leaning into the drama and raising the stakes, and not really doing anything dramatic from the end of part 6 all the way through 7. 7 was atrocious, and 8 as well had elements of that. But yeah, it was like a fanboy, as it were, who's just written something and agree with you, hasn't had any further scrutiny, and it's just been, there you go, that's my idea, setting it up for the future, that'll be enough. So again, it was
I mean, I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Dave Filoni. I know he gets a lot of, he's a bit Marmite. People out there either love him or hate him, sort of thing. But he's done some great work. He's done some really wonderful work in animation and whatever. And he hasn't done bad work in live action. But I just feel like, this show could have done with some more nuance than what was there. I feel, just trying to be, not too well. I know I have been quite negative about it, but it's funny. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I just thought it was okay. I wanted to love it, and I just thought it was a bit meh. And I thought there were things that were totally stupid in it. In this show about space wizards and now zombies and witches and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, we haven't had werewolves yet. mummies. Have you had more? Yeah, we've had a bit of a Frankenstein's creature in there with
We've
Daphne.
had wolves. We haven't had werewolves, but we've had
Yeah, we've
wolves.
had wolves. We had werewolves. They're wolves. Um, yeah, we've had them, but we've had Darth Vader as a kind of a Frankenstein's creature. So I think as far as the oh no, we haven't had a Dracula, have we? I think yeah, we haven't had any of that just yet. So I'm just kind of Invisible Man. We're just kind of leaning in more into the Universal's monster.
It'll be
Fantastic.
cheap. It'll be cheaper than digitally creating people. But there you go. Yeah, invisible.
Yeah.
No. All right. Well, I mean, is it? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's other things that
There is one more thing I
probably
do, one more point, and that
okay.
was I was discussing again with my daughter. I think overall with part 7 and 8, there were massive disappointment, and it's not to do with there was a little bit of a downer ending. So what I was saying is, when it came to Empire Strikes Back, we had the major downer ending. I thought the ending of Empire Strikes Back was just
Awesome.
throughout the entire movie, that story. The goodies were on the back foot, constantly on the chase. The baddies, the Empire
They
were always
struck
after them.
back.
Always,
They
they did.
struck back.
They were one step ahead all the way, and we had that downer ending, and you were like, "I want more! Oh my
Yeah.
god, give me more!" And then you have this one, and it and it was not a downer ending. It was like a what?
Meh. It was
Ahsoka's
a meh.
fine with this. What's happening there? Question, question, question. And you're like, I don't have that enthusiasm, and that's sad. It's really sad for me to go. Damn, I'm not begging for more. There's lots of questions, but do I really? The answers may be just as meh. So it's completely different on this one, and that's such a again from the first mostly of the first 6 parts of this series. Yeah, to have that nosedive of I don't really care anymore. It's a bit sad,
Yeah.
really, isn't it?
No, exactly. By the way, I looked up because I didn't know this. I've just been looking it up, just to sort of so we don't sort of leaving people going, they didn't say about this, but that the thing that Balin was looking was the statue of the Mortis gods, although it should have been Mordor gods, right? Because it looked like bloody Mordor, but known as the father and the son. However, the statue of the daughter has been destroyed, which may hint at Ahsoka's imminent role in the future as she carries the essence of the daughter within her, having been resurrected with the last of the gods' power before she herself died in the Clone Wars. So again, that's referencing back to something that
But again, if you don't know that,
no,
then
and I didn't know
it's
that.
all about
Vaguely remember it now. I've read it,
yeah.
but
If my daughter, without having listened or watched these episodes, she doesn't have YouTube, by the way, Keith. Before you say, because she's not a subscriber on the channel. Everybody should
what?
be a subscriber, by the
What?
way, because she's too young to have access
Yes,
to
I get it.
YouTube.
No,
Right?
I totally understand.
But
Yeah, that's
even
cool.
she, without hearing this, made the comment, "Oh, it's Middle Earth."
Yeah, it totally
So I was
looked
like,
like,
okay,
didn't it?
well, yeah. So that kind of takes you out of Star Wars, doesn't it? It's like in Book of Boba Fett, where you have those, what are
Oh,
they
the
mods?
Back to the Future style scooters or whatever.
Yeah,
That
you have scooters there, and you have
that
all
was
these
awesome.
references to modern Earth. It's like, no, this is Star Wars. It's a
Yeah, but
galaxy.
apparently the creative say, because I watched the they do the, I think it's called the Gallery, which comes on Disney, and it covers each season of the shows. And apparently, I did watch the one on the Book of Boba Fett, and that was supposed to be a reference to American Graffiti. But again, it's like, well, that's a bit of a tenuous link there, but it just pulled you out of the show and looked bloody ridiculous, right? There is a somebody's done a recut version into a movie of. They've done it for Kenobi, but they've also done it for Book of Boba Fett. And one of the things they've done in that is they've decolored all of those scooters so that they just look like, like most things you see on Tatooine, like grimy grey, or beige or whatever. It's yeah. But yeah, I mean, there are fan edits out there of a lot of stuff that are arguably better than what Disney put out. But there you go.
There we are.
Is there anything, Graham? I appreciate it. This was always going to be a long episode, and we've been almost like a feature film length here with this. Is there anything that you want to add before we sort of bring this season and this series to a close?
Not now. No, I think we've talked enough. I'm sure when we meet up again, we'll think of something else.
Oh, always. Yeah, that always happens.
We've covered the big bits of this now. So
all right.
That's I'm spent.
Fair enough. Well, if you've enjoyed this in any way, shape, or form, like I said, please do consider subscribing. Up to about 750 subscribers currently. It would be really nice to get to that magic 1,000 number by the end of the year, if that's at all possible, with only 3 months left now. But would appreciate it. You can get in touch with us. Obviously, you can put a comment at the bottom of this video, or you can email us at lswotcast@gmail.com. That's short for Let's See What's Out There podcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on the social medias, Home Media Minefield and LSWOTcast. You can find more of my creative work. I've mentioned a few times, I'd love to be creatively involved. If you want to see some short films that I've made with definitely no Disney budget whatsoever, go to my other channel, which is British Isles. That's EYLES, and there are half a dozen short films there that I've written, produced, directed, even acted in one of them. So please check that out. They're all micro budget, about 10 minutes each, so it only takes up about half an hour of your time. That'll be good. Also, as I mentioned, we have covered other shows on here. We've covered Star Trek Picard. We've covered the Mandalorian, all number of things, as well as movie franchises and things of that nature. On the home media front, I've covered my most watched video is actually the one where I talk about the original Star Wars trilogy on DVD, I'm afraid. So old technology now, but you can still play them. And it is a way of finding the original Star Wars films without any of the special edition alterations. So please check that video out. I can put a link to it at the end of this. And also, I've gone into great discussions on the Star Wars radio dramas, which I'm a big fan of. And the people who wrote the book on the making of the radio dramas were gracious enough to join me. That's John and Maria Jose Tenitu. They've also written books on Star Trek and all sorts of things. So yeah, please check out their work and that episode. And that really just leaves me to thank you all for taking the time to get this far and listen to us. I really appreciate that. And Graham, thank you for the last 8 weeks joining me on this journey. Okay, I know we've done a couple of double episodes. We've, but I really appreciate you joining me and giving your thoughts and perspective on this as well. I really appreciate it. You're
more than welcome. Thank you. And again, thank you for inviting me and spending the time with me, and so I can show off all my T-shirts as well, my Star Wars T-shirts for all those who are watching and not listening. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been great to delve deeper into Star Wars with you, Keith.
Yeah, lovely. All right. And, as I said, check out the channel. And in the future, we will see you next time on
Let's See What's Out There.
Bye for now. Thank you.